Good morning, everybody. My name's Lloyd Stokes. We are Sourced, and this is Sourced Presents with Ren Patel. Ren, great to see you.
Good to
Thanks
see
for
you
joining
too.
us. Background on this very, very quickly, because I'm going to not talk for too long, and I'm going to hand over to you, Ren. But Sourced Presents, for people who've never watched it before, is a half-hour, 40-minute session that we do every month, and we try and shine a light on people in our network who are in the tech SaaS space, who have worked primarily within startups and scale-ups, and share their story, talk about their experiences, and try and focus it around the topic that really stands out. This week, we're joined by Ren. Ren and I have known each other for a long time. I'm very proud to say that I placed Ren in his first SaaS business back at Asperity in 2010. So we shouldn't talk about that. It shows my age. Asperity then went on to become Reward Gateway. Huge success story for anyone who's in the HR tech space. They'll know that business. And Ren and I have stayed in contact ever since. I mentioned it in my post the other day. When I work with Ren, whether it be directly supplying him with talent, or having helped him in the past, or just generally catching up, the thing that really stands out to me is, and also all the referrals that Ren's ever passed me in terms of people in his network who might be looking. The thing that stands out is his ability to cultivate amazing relationships, and that for me is something that is the people element of what we do is often lost, I think, within organizations. So the topic today is about building great relationships, how you cultivate them, what Ren's learned along the way, the mistakes, the successes, and what he looks for in people as well. So enough of me talking, because I said I wouldn't talk for too long. Ren, I'd love to get you talking about your career and where you've worked and what you've done, just to give everyone a bit of context.
All right, thanks, Lloyd. Morning, everyone. First and foremost, thanks for having me on Sourced Presents. I'm a big fan of you, Lloyd, Nathan, and the team, and the way that you conduct yourself, especially on LinkedIn. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. A little bit about me. So when everyone talks about their career, they go straight into their professional experience. I take it back to my childhood. So in 1996, my mum and dad, who are my heroes, they took me from a place called Kent, which you'll know very well, Lloyd.
Yeah.
And they moved me and my sister down to the South Coast.
Yep.
And they bought this business. It was a news agent. It was in a place called Gorham by Sea in Worthing.
Yeah.
And they named it Renal News. So after me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason why I mention that is because for 25 years, mum and dad, myself, my sister Krishma, we lived in Worthing in Gorham, and for 25 years, mum and dad served the community. My dad would get up at 5 o'clock every morning. He'll do the papers. My mum will go down at 8 o'clock, and they'll just run this life where they're just servicing that shop, building that business, and they've done it for so many years. And the reason why I tell that story is because if you want to understand hard work, if you want to build a strong work ethic, if you want to know how to do and really set an example, both of them people have done that, and ultimately subsequently led me on into having the foundations and the values and the way that I work and operate in my sort of professional career. And you'll remember this, Lloyd, when I joined Asperity in 2010, I spent 4 years working in T-Mobile, running a number of sort of retail stores, and I did that at a very young age. And it was a really important part of my career, because when you're on the front line, whether you're running news agents or running a mobile phone retail business, you learn key fundamental skills that I think are easily transferable into the sort of B2B or B2C world ultimately.
Yeah.
And 2010, I joined Rural Gateway and I stayed there for 9 years. Yeah, I joined as a product specialist manager, so I was doing upsell into the existing client book, and
Yep.
then subsequently I moved into account management, and then sat in our consultancy team for a very long time.
Mhm.
And Royal Gateway made me,
Mhm.
made me who I am. It was a
Yep.
fantastic business. I fell in love with it. I'm still in love with it. But I grew and developed, and I did lots of different roles there. And at the height of it, I was the UK Client Success Director from 2017 to 2019, leading a team of circa 40 people, servicing 1,200 clients with a recurring revenue model of like 18 million pounds, which is crazy thinking about it. And then
Yeah.
in 2019, I moved across to salary finance. And again, I've been there for coming up to 5 years, and it's going from like a hyper growth business to another hyper growth business,
Yep.
but same and different. It was just it's been incredible.
I didn't know we hadn't talked about it, but I didn't know that you were going to lead in with the kind of like personal journey before. And I actually didn't know that. I don't know if we've ever talked about that, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because you mentioned you referenced with your parents that you experienced them serving the community.
Yeah.
Um, and actually that's exactly what fundamentally I think you do with your customer base in a completely different context, but exactly the same in a way. And I know from having spoken to you so many times how passionate you are about the customer and about making sure that the customer has an amazing experience. And it's so I I work with clients who don't spend enough time when they're we come to this later, but when they're looking to hire, they don't spend enough time understanding the person and what their personal story and where they grew up and their parents and things. Because those things, as they have done with you, massive impact, right? Like that serving the community thing is and just lastly before you is how does that make you feel? Like, yeah, how does that make you feel? Because it's incredibly rewarding, I find.
Yeah, I'm a very, very proud person,
Yeah.
and like my background, the way that I've been brought up, the way that I've got certain values that have been instilled with me across my family. Like my dad is one of nine, my mum's one of four. I've got a big, big network, but it, you've got to be passionate, you've got to be proud. And I remember this saying when I was at Royal Gateway, and like the founder shared with us, like you're at work an awful long time in your life. If you don't love it, leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just stuck with me all throughout my career. Um, and like I feel when you talk about the science, the methodology around like servicing customers and clients and people, I think you just got to do the basics exceptionally well. And that's what I've just sort of never ever forgotten, and I try to like sort of stay um doing that whatever level I get to in my career
Yeah.
or whatever level I operate in. I think that's just like really, really important.
I completely agree. I'm interested to know. So in SaaS sales, I think that one of the amazing things that's happened over the last 10, 15 years is that sales as a sector has been put up on a pedestal in a way that it never was before. And it's also been improved considerably. If I think about when I started off in sales recruitment, even just breaking down the various parts of the sales process are now clearly defined. SDR, AE, customer success, account management. There's an acknowledgement that one person probably isn't good at all of those things, and actually, you need to find people who are. And that has been huge, and it works. It completely works. I sometimes think though that it can be overcomplicated, and that organizations and startups and scale ups overcomplicate the SaaS sales process and don't work hard on the core fundamentals of the people element of what they're doing within internal and external teams. Do you agree, or what's your experience?
Yeah, I think you've got it spot on. I also think there's this element where people copy what other businesses are doing.
Yeah,
I think that if Joe Bloggs is doing it this way, I should do it this way.
yeah,
And I think I'm very fortunate of worked with and for people that think outside the box.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think that look, you could be an implementation manager, you could be a client success manager, you could be a salesperson,
yeah,
you could be an account manager, like all these different roles, and you'll be swimming in your lane. But I also am a big believer in you being able to adapt to being able to do different parts of people's roles.
yeah,
And there's actually a big part in my career where I spent in sales and consultancy, and then moved to working in the existing client book team, either as an IC or as a player coach or as a leader. And everything I learned in that consultancy business, I transferred over,
yeah,
and I developed and I grew and I become even better. Yeah.
yeah.
But it's them fundamental basics that you learn here that you've got to take with you, and you can't forget about them.
And for you, what are those fundamental basics? What are the things that you say these are my non-negotiables?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I was like spent a lot of time thinking about this. And if I depending on like what hat I'm wearing,
Yeah,
like treat people how you want to be treated.
yeah,
So I was thinking about a lot of things when I was coming onto this call,
yeah,
and I still remember when I was growing up as a child, mum and dad were running the business, so they couldn't always take me to football or take me to like parties and all that sort of stuff. I used to have to rely on like my friends' parents, etc. But I always remember when I got out the car, or I got in the car, I always said thank you and goodbye, and it's just manners. I think that's really important. Like, you know me, Lloyd, we've known each other 13 years. I love having banter. But when I'm in like that professional environment and in a personal environment, I just think like treat people how you want to be treated. And that's like stayed with me. And then there's another saying that stayed with me in my career, which I've like sort of driven and driven and driven upwards, sideways, whoever wants to listen within my team.
yeah.
And that is open and honest communication as quick as you can.
Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. And that means if you need to deliver a message to your team or to someone, whether it's Slack, whether it's in a team capacity, team meeting, stand up,
Mhm,
be open and honest, right? Don't bullshit people. Just tell them exactly what's going on.
mhm.
And I think that fundamentally builds trust, loyalty, and everything else that goes with it. And then there's two other things that are non-negotiables for me, and these have evolved over time. But I think if I take it back to when I started my career, it's lead by example.
Mhm.
I'm the most competitive person you meet. Yeah, ask the guys when we go for Sally Finance Socials, I'm going to win. But also, if you're asked to sweep the shop floor at a T-Mobile store, like make sure you've done it yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then secondly, I think this is becoming more and more important over the last few years. And I think like the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, the wars, everything else that's happening in business at the moment, like empathy and emotional intelligence are things that I think about more so than ever, because you just don't know what's going on with that person that you're speaking to on Zoom or in person, whether that's a colleague, a teammate, or a client.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I think that the lead by example point in particular is one that it's I know that we're both parents of similar age children, and something that I've learned is that your children will do what they see you doing, not what you tell them to do. Um, and I read it in a book, I think, and then I've heard it so many times since. that, and it's really resonated with me because actually, managing, leading teams and being a parent, there's a lot of crossover there. And it's nothing to do with age. It's not really about that at all. It's just that it's the ability to be able to think, I believe, consciously about what you're doing. So as a parent and as a leader, if you just go onto automatic pilot and default to, I just do this because I do it, then that's a dangerous position, because you're not assessing, personally looking at yourself and saying, am I doing the right thing for those people? Am I doing the right thing for my children? And why am I doing that as well? And I think that kind of leads me on nicely, because what I was going to ask is, how much of the way that you are and what you instill within the people that you work with has always been there, as in you just, it's come from your parents, it's that nature nurture thing, and how much have you spent consciously developing yourself, because you've recognized as you've gone through your career that it's become more and more and more important, and you've always had to say, right, I need to step up, I need to step up, I need to step up. Does the question make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It's something I've been thinking about. So like, like you have like key values and principles and fundamentals that like you grow up with or you build over time.
Yep.
And I've always had like feedback from like my network, like in a personal, professional sense, to like Ren, you're very likable, like you just are like very caring, you're very endearing, etc. Like you got the biggest heart and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And I don't take that for granted. Okay.
Yep.
But what I then have done is I've professionalized it in the environment that I'm put in, whether that's at Rural Gateway, T-Mobile, or at Salary Finance. And what I mean by that is I know how I learn and develop and grow, and that's like observing and watching people.
Yep.
And there are key people in my career who I look up to and I really aspire to be like. Yeah. But then I take what they do and I'll make it my approach. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll give you an example. Yeah.
Yep.
There's a wonderful man called Glenn Elliott, who was
Yep.
the founder of Asperity Employee Benefits, of Rural Gateway. I'm still in touch with him. He actually, it's a funny story. After, you might not know this actually, after 11 months at Rural Gateway, I was made redundant from that product
Okay.
specialist role that you placed me in, Lloyd. So thanks
Yep.
for that.
Yep.
Yeah. But he like had to have a difficult conversation and tell me that, Ren, it's just not working. But there are these roles, I want you to go and apply for them. Yeah. And that was like a kick in the teeth. That's an ego thing, right? Like you've just
Yep.
been made redundant. They don't want you, Ren. Like you spent all this time trying to like do X, Y, and Z. And I remember that stage in my career, Glenn doing that, but then just being really human after it. Yeah.
Yep.
And he was like, I want you to stay, you're a good cultural fit. Yeah. But go and apply for these positions. And then there was two other people during that time that like just really stood out and I'm very like fond of, which is a lady called Sarah Canby and Shelley Lavery, like both Rural Gateway alumni, still friends of mine right now. But then three people during my time at Rural Gateway, they stood up as being leaders. They were able to make a decision, but also just be very, very, very personable, empathetic. They probably don't realize how much they actually done for me at that stage of my career that allowed me to like then move onwards and upwards. Yeah. But they taught me a lot of stuff as I went through my career around how to treat people, how to act, how to behave. But also, I then use a lot of resources around that, like sort of time in my career to help me become better. And that
Yep.
was like, the Simon Sinek Start with a Why. It
Yep.
was like watching a lot of TED Talks. But I also remember the way that we used to work and operate during that time at Rural Gateway. we empower people to like really step up and do things differently. And I just got involved in all of that. So I presented at quarterly business updates. I was part of like the culture team. I just what we called at that time, it was called not work-life balance, work-life integration.
Okay.
And that like
Interesting.
really and that's had to evolve and change in my career because I've had children,
Yep.
and you can't always be at work. Like I've learned how to like sort of step out and step back in, which is really important.
Do you think that you mentioned that maybe if people have worked with you and spent time with you, that they've described you as being incredibly likable or very endearing character, and I definitely agree with those character traits. When I speak to startups where they are looking to build a commercial team very early on, because of the often, especially in the current climate and the world that we live in, where there's a scrutiny around investment and who you hire and how you hire, and a pressure to deliver numbers and performance. Sales can be a fairly brutal business, right? Fundamentally, it comes down to growth, and it comes down to revenue generation, and it comes down to retention of that customer base. It's easy to park some of those human qualities that are so important, like being likable. And I speak to candidates sometimes, and I will describe a business and say, look, they're a really nice business. They're really nice, and the word nice is perceived as sometimes a negative or soft word, as in, you can't be both. You can't be ambitious and driven and motivated and want to smash targets and grow and also be nice. Yeah, but I'm certain, because I know so many people who worked at Asperity and Reward Gateway, that you had the balance between both.
Yeah, look, I think like Rural Gateway is a hyper growth business. Yeah, but our culture and our values meant a huge amount to us. The way, like I used to say that the buzz that I used to get going into that office, whether it was in Notting Hill Gate or Tottenham Court Road, it's like no other feeling about it.
Yeah.
I think like likable, nice, same words mean roughly the same, but I think it's all around cultural fit.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think people, especially now when they're, a lot of businesses trying to get to profitability, they're accountable for that number. But if it was me starting my own business now, I'm looking for someone that is culturally right for the business, because hiring, as you know, Lloyd, like it's expensive. Like hiring, training, coaching, developing is very, very expensive. But I think what Asperity or Rural Gateway done very, very well is this person culturally right for this environment? And don't get me wrong, that business was a private equity business. Yeah. It's done 3 or 4 seasons in selling, yeah. And there were big targets, big objectives, big expectations. But because we created an environment where people can thrive, they can learn, they could grow, they could develop, and we led with that in the attraction and the recruitment strategy.
Yep.
Like lots of people were able to sort of join on that journey and not only help the business be successful, but a lot of them have gone on and achieved a lot in their careers.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important. Like a startup and a scale up is always going to be that stepping stone for someone to go and do something bigger and better. And I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it.
we've talked about all the benefits so far and the successes and of having a people-led strategy, prioritizing human relationships and great relationships. What have you seen to be some of the challenges and pitfalls of that come from doing that, if any?
Oh, there's a lot. Like, I think if I'm brutally honest, you need a balance now. I think that's where I am in my life. Okay. So if like someone asked me about my leadership style, I'm like, I'm firm, but I'm fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's how I describe my style. But then in terms of like the problems or the drawbacks of the way that I work and operate, I think I've just recently seen this. I think you can have personal relationships and connections with people that have been with you from day one, and then you're emotionally attached to them people,
Yep.
but they're not the right people to take the business to the next level.
Okay.
So I've seen that just recently at Salary Finance, yeah.
Yep.
But also I remember seeing it when I was growing up at Royal Gateway, where we're hired a CFO or hired a salesperson, and we just didn't get it right. But Glenn or Shelley or whoever like one of the LT were, they could identify that quite quickly, and they moved on.
Yep.
I think recently what I've like sort of observed is that there are people that have probably stayed in roles probably far too long because we like you or
Yeah.
we love you or you've done a lot for the business when it was like at the early stages. And I think you've just got to be very grown up about when the right time is to sort of part ways.
Yep.
And I think that leads me on to like my second point around this topic, which is you've got to make tough decisions, Lloyd. Like I think that's something I've worked on probably a lot in the last like 12 to 18 months where I could be likable, rare, and I could like show empathy, show emotional intelligence. But if I'm going to grow up, if other people in senior positions are going to grow up, you've got to make decisions, and that's for the business needs and not make it personal. So I think there needs to be a balance, and that comes in time.
It's hard, right? That balance is hard because
Yeah,
you know that cultivating the quality of relationships that you want internally will build the business and grow and
yeah,
hit the objectives that you want and deliver excellence for your customers.
yeah,
But at some point, you have to be able to review that. And it's, yeah, I use a sporting analogy. You look at a top performing sports side, a football team. Yeah, the ability to constantly refresh, even if you've got somebody who's a real fan favorite that everybody loves. If there's somebody better out there that you can replace them with, the top leaders, the top managers in any of their fields make those decisions, don't they? There's
yeah,
unfortunately, and it's an incredible balance between the emotional side because you like that person and actually recognizing the fact that I can get somebody for right now where my team is, where my business is, where my whoever it is, I can find somebody better to do the job that I need them to do now, not the job maybe that I needed them to do 2 years ago.
yeah, yeah. I think like you used the word earlier. It's like there's like that person in the back of your mind talking about like how's this gonna what's your perception gonna be, Ren? Like what are people gonna think about you?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Like how is this gonna land with a wider team ultimately?
mm-hmm.
And like you got to play with them demons and you've got to like sort of work it through. But I think now I've got to the stage in my career where similar to you, Lloyd, like I read a lot about like sort of sport. I love sport, and I read how like sort of like the big leaders in the sport in industry have like got to like here to here, and I think it's around taking the emotional attachment out of it and just being very like sort of clear, concise, and have clarity around what what decision you're making.
No.
And then the second thing is you can't make it personal anymore. You just can't make it personal. So it's like how you perceived, and then how like the personal part of it. Like, and you got to show some. I think you've got to show the level of maturity around like your decision making and where you behave. But you have to kind of real journey with it, because sometimes it doesn't sit right with your morals or your values or the principles. And I've got a hell a lot of them, like, based on like the conversation that we've had today.
Last question. Because I'm aware we're running slightly over, but that's it's time well spent. That's for sure. I'm going to leave this on a slight recruitment spin, because it's I think it's helpful for people if they are looking to build teams from scratch or kind of early stage teams. And we have covered a little bit of this, but to summarize for you, when you're looking to hire people, everyone will always give a wish list of desired experience. So yeah, I'm hiring a senior customer success manager. I want them to have had 3 years in a customer success manager's role, working within a SaaS business, within a relevant industry, similar kind of personas and stakeholders, etc., etc., etc. And to a point, that's fair, But I think that you can become too focused on those things and miss really great talent that's out on the fringes, not completely, left field, although that sometimes works as well. But there's a talent pool of people out there who are not meeting that criteria, but they're not a million miles away. And I know that you in the past have had huge success in hiring, and clearly you've had, at one point, as you said, the team at Rawgate was 40 people, huge amount of hiring. What are you looking for when you're looking to identify people that you think that they're those good people, relationship builders, but they've got the traits that you're looking for? What are the things that you're looking for, and how do you find them?
Over the years, when I've like built a lot of teams and recruited lots of people, done a lot of interviews, but I have like a set sort of way of conducting those. But the first thing I'm looking for when I'm interviewing or looking for candidates is, but how do they come across? Because you more often than not now, it's over Zoom.
Yep.
And people could be quite robotic. They could be quite like sort of still. They're not showing their real personality. But I want people to be personable. I want them to be able to build rapport. I want them to be able to have an adult to adult conversation, but also just show their personality. I think that goes overlooked, because I think if I'm going to put someone in front of a client or someone internally, I want them to be able to like show them who they are. And I think it's like the fundamental part of like the world that I live and breathe, which is customer and client success. So that's the first thing. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. I think they've got to make sure that they're a cultural fit for the team, for the business, and also for yourself. So this is someone that you're going to invest your time, your effort, your energy, potentially, to help them learn, grow, develop. And you need to make sure that you can quickly qualify if that's reciprocated on the call. And then I want people, or what I look for people, is to be able to think outside the box and be creative.
Okay.
I'll give you an example.
Yep.
And this is coming back to you.
Okay.
When I came to them London offices in your old recruitment company, who I won't mention,
that's fine. You can say Certus,
I'm just kidding. But the way that you ran the process was, I met you. I think I met James. And I met one other.
Yep.
And I was in this room, and you all three came to pitch to me around like different roles. Do you remember that's the
Yep.
process that you ran, right?
Yeah, I do.
That,
Yeah, yeah.
that makes me like, that's like something that stayed in my mind for 13 years. Okay. And then you messaged me the day before I was joining Asperity. Yeah. And obviously I knew that you were getting paid after 3 to 6 months, but you messaged me on 3 months just to see how I was getting on.
Yep.
Okay. But they're the things that people forget to do, like the basics of, relationship management, or staying outside the box, except thinking outside the box. But that's the kind of stuff that I want to be able to see. Like, I don't want to see the same person. I want you to be able to like show me that you're different in the way that you work and you operate and you think. Okay.
Yep.
And the last but not least is just like you said, some non-negotiables, which is strong work ethic. Like, you're talking to someone where their parents have run their own business for 25 years, etc. And I've had to do the same to get to where I am in my career. And then there's just this word that stayed with me for a long, long time in my career, which is take ownership.
Yep.
Run your career, run your world like it's your own business.
Yep.
You'll go and achieve some incredible things.
That's a great way to finish. Ren, thank you so much. I told you before we were waiting, we were really looking forward to doing this one. And look, we've covered so much. Like, I am so happy to have played a small part in what you've done, but also having worked with you, having spent time with you, having never bought you a beer, as you mentioned, which I will resolve. It's your it goes to show that there's a lot more to finding the right people and the right team than just a CV and a background that says I've performed and delivered and hit all of my targets. That's of course important, but it's secondary. And I think that it's secondary to internal teams, and it's definitely secondary to delivering excellence externally with your customers. I think that your customers must just really enjoy the time that they spend with you and your team, because I know that it's something that you'll prioritize, and they'll enjoy it on a personal level, and they'll trust you, and they'll know that you're going to give an honest assessment. And I think that something that I try and do and live, our business values are very aligned to that as well. So thank you. I really, really appreciate your time. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. I'll be sharing a load of clips on LinkedIn. We'll be uploading this onto our YouTube channel over the course of the next 48 hours. But yeah, for now, Ren, excellent way to spend 40 minutes. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.